Welcome back to Humble Conversations. I'm your host, Dr. James Knight, and today I'm joined by someone who truly lives out what it means to lead with heart, Ryan Aroney. Talk about that. Talk about why humility is so important.
The houses that I was going to largely were black male. Were my role models.
Wow.
You know, it's like I don't need to have a black friend to know that racism is bad.
This is why I go so hard for humility, because I think humility is the prerequisite.
Yeah.
That if you don't have humility, which we define humility as being open-minded, self-aware, being able to appreciate others' values and thoughts and cultures, you cannot truly occupy a space of empathy like you're talking about without the humility.
Yeah.
Because you wouldn't be open to it.
This video is sponsored by Roundstone.
Welcome back to Humble Conversations, the podcast where we explore the stories and values that shape transformational leaders. I'm your host, Dr. James Knight, and today I'm joined by someone who truly lives out what it means to lead with heart, vision, and community at the center. Ryan Aroney, did I say that right?
You did, you got it.
All right, is the president and CEO of United Way of Lorain County, where he's been leading impactful work for the past 5.5 years as a CEO. But his journey with the organization goes back over a decade. He first joined the team in 2011 and has since grown through the ranks, deeply rooted in service to the community. Before his nonprofit leadership path, Ryan served as a director of media relations for Cleveland's professional soccer team, bringing his communications expertise into spaces that build connection and momentum. Outside of work, Ryan's commitment to Lorain County continues. He serves as vice chair of the Main Street Lorain Board, is active in the Rotary Club of Oberlin, where he also grew up, and we'll talk about that, and consistently shows up as a leader who understands the power of humility, collaboration, and vision. Today we'll talk about his leadership journey, what it means to stay local, make a difference, and how humility has shaped the way he leads and lives. So Ryan, thank you for being a guest on this podcast. I appreciate you, your friendship, and just, the good work that we're doing together. As as Lewis says, we're going to get in some good trouble, hopefully, So my first question is going to be, so you've been with United Way of Lorain County for over a decade and now serve as CEO. Can you walk us through your journey? How did you get started and what kept you rooted here?
Yeah, it's been quite a journey and a bit crazy how it all happened. My career and passion prior to coming here had been athletics. And I was one of those kids who used sports to stay, engaged in school. And really it was my motivation to get good enough grades to be eligible. And so that became my focus on my career early on. And I had moved up through a variety of teams and was doing pretty well. But through the Great Recession, I ended up getting laid off. A team I worked for ended up, folding and not existing anymore. And I really struggled there for a while to find really any job, but in particular in my career, my chosen career path, or even within a broader communications or media relations framework. So for a year and a half, I was doing lawn care. Just kind of went back to, what I had done in college during the summers, and tried my best to have the work ethic that, my family did. And most of them worked in factories my whole life. And one thing I always kind of took out of those athletics experiences were most of those professional sports teams and even a lot of the colleges do community work. And a lot of the professional teams have their own foundation. And I started thinking, hey, that might be kind of cool to do something like that. So I saw a job was open at United Way. I knew United Way from basically NFL commercials, but I didn't really know what it was. But I was desperate. So I applied, and I remember I interviewed, and I still didn't really know what it was, but I really liked the director who was here at the time, Bill Harper, my predecessor. And I went back working the lawn care job, and I literally had like the worst day of my professional career. Everything that could have gone wrong went wrong. and just had like bad interactions with customers and terrible weather and faulty technical equipment, and just everything was bad. And I got back to my car at the end of the day, and United Way called me and offered me the job. And I accepted it on the spot, and I didn't even know what the salary was. And which was crazy. But I was excited to get started. So, fast forward, as I came here, I was literally learning, on the spot what United Way was. But it became super clear to me very early that the work that we do in the community was completely tied to my own personal story.
Yeah.
And having grown up in Lorain County and Oberlin, I think made it more special to me that we were able to give back in my own community. But the focus areas and the topics and the type of service that we provide either did or could have helped me growing up. And so then I just really became passionate about doing that work and helping people. And at the time, I was the donor engagement specialist, which is fancy words for saying I helped raise money.
Yep.
I met with donors and did a lot of workplace campaigns to raise dollars at local businesses. But pretty good timing for me, and we could talk more about this. We were changing our business model from what United Way had been forever to what we needed to become.
Yeah.
And so I was able to take that new idea and use that communications background to clearly communicate it to our donors and get people on board. And so a couple of years of doing that, I got promoted into the marketing and engagement director position. So overseeing still the fundraising, but much more of the marketing and communications. And at that point, I knew I wasn't going to leave here, at least until Bill Harper retired. I just felt so strongly about learning from him.
Yeah.
And I knew it was a good place for me to grow. I was passionate about the work. And as he started, nearing retirement, was really the first time it entered my mind that maybe I could move into the president and CEO role. And I was also considering going back to school for an MBA. And then all of those things just aligned perfectly. So then it was about 5.5 or 6 years of doing that director role before I got promoted and moved into the president and CEO role. And, that was December of 19, just a couple of months before COVID.
Yep.
So that in itself has been a crazy journey. But, the last, 14 or so years have gone so fast. But, I'm just remain committed and passionate about the work that we do and feel lucky to be here.
That's good. So, your predecessor, would you consider him to be a mentor?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Still.
Still a mentor.
Yeah.
Yeah. How important is mentorship for you and your development?
Hugely important. Yeah, I think before I came to United Way, I don't know that professionally I had any mentor. Definitely influential people that I took a lot from, but nobody that I worked with that closely. And when I got here, I could have told you the things I didn't like about places I worked or leaders I worked for, but I couldn't have articulated, the leadership style and the culture of an organization that I admired.
Yeah.
I had never really seen it.
Yeah.
And so instead of coming with the negative, I learned the positive, and I learned to, actively cultivate that culture.
Yeah.
And, so much of still what we do here from a team culture standpoint and my own leadership style, have been adopted from what he was doing. So I feel super lucky to have gone through that training really for 10 years.
That's pretty amazing. I've been talking lately, with a lot of podcasts. I've been asking, some of my guests, like, who were those mentors for you? And I've been talking to some guys that I also mentor, and just guys, that I respect. And I think mentorship is something we hear thrown around a lot. But when you talk to men, grown men, oftentimes they don't know if they ever had a mentor.
Mm-hmm.
Especially if they don't have a strong relationship with their dad, right? Because for some people, if they grew up with their dad, they're like, it was my dad. But, one of the things that I found is that mentorship is really, really priceless because, you just don't know everything. And oftentimes you don't know how to show up. You don't know what to do. Would you consider, what's his name again?
Bill Harper.
Bill Harper. Would you consider him a humble leader? And if so, what was it that made him a humble leader for you? That he was that guy that, you learned so much from and respected.
Yeah, it's so interesting. I was just in this room last week with you with a training,
Yep.
and you asked a question about humble leaders and have you had any?
Yep.
And immediately in my mind, I'm thinking about Bill.
Yeah.
And
the cool thing is somebody in that meeting named you.
yeah, that was cool. I wasn't expecting that, but right, and right in my mind at least, I'm thinking like I just copied Bill,
Right.
So that's the power of that mentorship, like you're saying. But honestly, the same things that were shared that people said I was doing is what I appreciated about him. So I'm happy to hopefully have reciprocated that a bit. But just the ability, first of all, when I got here, I was coming from humble beginnings, as they say, and he was super accomplished in his career and kind of was coming to United Way as a bit of a second career late to do something new. And I mean, had been appointed to state positions by the governor and just done all these really amazing things and won all these awards. And then to be, door open, on the ground. There were times I remember when I was in the director job and things would just be going crazy, schedule wise or whatever. And he would say, "What can I do?" And we used to do a huge tabling at the county fair where we'd be out handing out information. And we had another big event happening that was competing for my time. And he just went and staffed the table at the county fair. And what president and CEO is going to do that?
Not a lot.
And so for him to, put on a ball cap and some jeans and go do that, I thought was completely within his personality, but I thought was pretty cool. So that's always who I've wanted to be, of like, never ask anybody to do something you wouldn't do, and be genuine when you say, how can I help? And if people need it, then do it. But I think it's also about what I appreciated about him and what I try to do of being, sensitive to the whole person. It's like, this job is important. There are a lot of important jobs in the world, but it's the least important thing that we're doing in our life. And if people need to have some flex time or go home to take care of family, always do that first. There's enough people here we can cover. And so I always appreciated that about him. And then just like the personal growth piece. I think a lot of businesses are willing to do professional development, but only if it helps the bottom line. And sometimes there's even contracts associated with that. And I much rather would prefer personal development, whether or not it's going to help us. And I think by doing that genuinely, you keep people.
It's true.
Not with a contract.
And
so I've tried to implement that as well, because I know I benefited from it.
And truth be told, it always helps, in some form or fashion. But I think sometimes organizations are selfish, to the degree that, like you said, it's focused on the bottom line, and they're not always thinking about how it adds value to people. And when you become a leader or organization that's committed to adding value to people, good things come back in return. It's kind of like you put that good energy out there, it comes back because you're doing right by people. That's awesome. But there got to be something also, when I look at you and I think about your story, you had to steward that relationship. And I think that's important for people that are listening, is that when you're blessed with an opportunity to be around great leaders or to be in a good situation, good company, good team, not everyone stewards that. I've watched some other podcasts where people say, I made a mistake. I didn't realize what I had. I didn't steward it correctly. If you look back over that, that span of just coming here and moving into the different roles and moving up, what could you offer our listeners in terms of how do you store the relationships that you've been blessed with, and how do you make the most of the opportunity? Like, what was your mindset? Were you thinking like, what? I want to volunteer. I want to be available. I'm going to go the extra. Like, what was those things that you think helped you to get here? Because you're pretty young too. And when people think about, growing up in a small town like Oberlin and coming from, during that recession in 2008, where you like, man, I don't got a job. I'm gonna go cut grass. I might be. You told me in our pre-interview, I might be doing this for the rest of my life. So that's humble beginnings to be like moving on up to where you in spaces and you have an opportunity to kind of know the who's who across the county because of the role that you serve in. What was your mindset to help you steward that relationship and just to kind of really, move up?
Yeah, there's a lot there. Part of my story growing up in Oberlin, largely during my childhood, was in a single parent household.
Yeah.
And my mom worked in a factory my whole life, and as did my brother and a lot of other people who I know. And one of my first summer jobs was at that factory. Now I worked outside. I was doing the
Yeah.
lawn
Yeah.
and, you know, weeding and mulching and whatever else needed done, watering. And I remember how hot it felt outside. And I always say, I don't know if it's scientifically proven, but that was the hottest summer in the history of North America. It was so hot outside. But I would go inside to try to cool down, and it felt even hotter
Right.
inside the factory, And so, like, my motivation, truly, I wasn't a great student. I was motivated by sports. My motivation for going to college was to not work in a factory.
Yeah.
And it's not disparaging to factory work because it
Yeah.
supported my family forever.
Yeah.
And I really respect the work. I wasn't built for it.
Yeah.
And so when I was moving my way up through, my career, and I was doing that lawn care, that's what it was. It felt like, all that work for nothing. I'm kind of back into doing a hard manual labor job. But honestly, it's one of the proudest things I've ever done because I proved to myself that I could do it.
Mm-hmm.
And I did it for over a year and kept the bills paid and, started preparing for a wedding.
Yeah.
And so I'm super proud of that. But somewhere in that journey, I was becoming keenly aware of, like, it's the, like, knowing people. It's not what you do but who you know, and I didn't know anyone. And so whenever I was getting connected to people, someone gave me advice of, like, when people offer to help you, take them up on it.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just lip service.
Yeah.
And so when I was trying to be really good at networking, and if people would say, let me know how I could help, I would tell them, or I would ask for a lunch or some sort of meeting.
Yeah.
And I remember even when I was at school at Cleveland State and I was working in athletics, there were two leaders there who I really admired. Gary Waters was the basketball coach who I learned a lot from. And Lee Reed was the athletic director who had played basketball at Cleveland State early in his career. And I remember asking, it's like an absurd question.
Mm-hmm.
I was just like a random student, but I asked the athletic director if I could sit in on some meetings.
Yeah.
And he let me.
Yeah.
And I just, like, sat in on some meetings and tried to learn as much as I could in that and, about leadership, about just how things work.
Yeah.
And so I always kind of had that in my mind.
Yeah.
So when you then fast forward into when I was coming into United Way, it was on the initial phone screening when I was attracted to the leadership of Bill right away. I was like, there's something there. Yep. And as I got here and I was learning so much, I told people, and I had people, especially because I was coming from athletics and my career had been in the Cleveland area, all my connections were either in athletics, moving across the country, or in Cleveland. And I had people reaching out to me all the time about jobs. Yeah. And I was like, no, I'm not leaving this place at all, you know? And and then the cool thing about this job too is you just have so many connections. There's so many businesses and individual people and community organizations that somehow are working with United Way. Yeah. And I really tried to just take that mindset of, what can I learn from this person? Or if they've offered to help, take them up on it. Yeah. And it's been honestly, I think it was beneficial to my career because as that entry level donor engagement specialist, was building rapport with people, with donors. That was my job. And really, as they moved up in their careers, some of them joined our board and became influential in the community. I think that helped me move up as well. And eventually, no, it wasn't self-serving or at any
Yeah.
point, but eventually when the board had to make a decision to, if they were going to hire me or any of the other people who they hired or interviewed on a national search, a lot of those people in the room were my contacts, people
Mm.
who I had stewarded from 2011 when I started
Mm.
as donors and volunteers, and eventually they became board
That's a
members.
good lesson in there, brother.
Yeah.
That's a good lesson. You said a couple bars, right? You said it's not always what you know, but it's who you know, right? And you talked about the power of networking, and you talked about, man, I really didn't know nobody. And I think that's where a lot of entrepreneurs struggle and a lot of leaders struggle
Hmm.
is that they don't steward their relationships properly. And I'm learning that, right, as an entrepreneur, right? Is that one of my friends from college, he said, bro, if you're not networking, you're not working. Because, essentially in any business, your work is really predicated on how well you network because you can't do anything at a significant level alone. You got to do it with others.
Hmm.
And I think that's where a lot of people do miss it. And I'm glad that you spoke about that. But I also think you exhibited a lot of what I try to preach is you remained a student throughout the entire journey. You saying, "Hey, can I sit down on these meetings just so that I can learn?" Right? It's having that hunger. It's having that humility. Is always being a student, and I think that's so key if you want to go far. You know what I mean? Talk about Oberlin. So for those of you that are watching, I grew up in South Side of Chicago. Um, got an opportunity to come out to Ohio to play basketball at a school called Oberlin College. Now I had hoop dreams to go to like some big school like Illinois, some Big Ten school. It didn't work out that way, but I was like a D1 talent at a small D3 school, dunking on cats. I was just killing cats, right? Um, but what was so funny? The coach at the time was a guy named Miguel Curl. He had came to my house because he's from Chicago and recruited me. And he described Oberlin. He said Oberlin's like a Mayberry. Cause I'm like, I've never heard of this place called Oberlin. He like, well, it's a real quaint, small town. You can leave your bike unlocked. Won't nobody mess with it. He like, it's like a mulberry. I was like, what? And so I was like, man, I'm not going there. I ain't never heard of that, right? But God literally shut every door. I had no choice but to come to Ohio. And so I ended up coming here to hoop. And I didn't want to go to Oberlin so bad that I didn't even visit it.
Wow.
Man, I didn't even visit it. Man, I was like, I'm not going there, right? And so I remember when I finally had to choose it because it was the only school that gave me enough money to afford it, right? And what was crazy about it, I was telling people, yeah, I'm going to play ball in Ohio, and everybody in Chicago kept saying, "You going to Ohio State?" That was the only school they knew in Ohio. They're like, "You going to Ohio State?" I'm like, no, it's Oberlin. Like, what's that? So man, we come off the turnpike. Man, nobody knew how to get to Oberlin. All I knew is we was close because this back in the 90s, it wasn't like no cell phone.
Yeah, no GPS.
No GPS, right? And man, all I knew, I kept seeing farm fields. You go to Vermilion, Wellington, it's so many farm fields. I was so scared. I was ready to go back to Chicago. But turned out to be one of the greatest blessings of my life. Met my wife there, got into ministry, all those different things. And Oberlin's such a beautiful place because it's so diverse. It's so rich with so much history. Talk about growing up in Oberlin and what that did for you and what that mean to you.
Yeah, I think it's a special place. I
Yeah.
feel super fortunate to have grown up there, and on my mom's side of the family, we're all from Oberlin. I'm the fifth generation
Yeah.
who grew up in Oberlin, and I just think, due to its history and how it was founded and
Yeah.
what Oberlin stands for, both the town and the college.
Yeah.
It instills a certain worldview into you, and I've always felt fortunate to have had that.
Yeah.
I could have. You mentioned those fields all in all directions around Oberlin. I could have grown up in a much different environment and
Yeah.
likely a much different perception
Yeah.
of you know, values and morals and
Yeah.
good and evil. And so my upbringing was probably pretty typical Oberlin, and that it was very diverse, and you know, who my friends were and whose houses I was going to and who was at our house.
Yeah.
And you know, I always feel like I've had this pretty interesting experience too, because my dad graduated from Oberlin College. My dad's from the East Coast,
Wow.
and came to Oberlin to you know, because he was a great student, and he actually played football and baseball at Oberlin College, so a really good athlete.
I didn't know
And
that.
yeah,
Mm.
he so the fun story, my grandmother worked security at the college her whole career and eventually retired from there. And
Yeah.
she met my dad and liked him and
Yeah.
introduced him to my mom.
Wow.
And they hit it off and eventually got married and
Wow.
started a family. But when that didn't work out, I was around 2 years old or so.
Mm-hmm.
My dad ended up moving to Florida and around the country after that.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah.
you know, he's always been in my life, but
Yeah.
far away,
Yeah.
and not at times, especially not super active at
For
all.
sure.
And so I felt like I've got this kind of inside view of Oberlin College,
Yep.
different than the town gown,
Yep.
towny relationship.
Yep.
And, you know, pretty much anyone who didn't work in a factory in my family worked for the college in some capacity, security or food service or whatever.
Yep.
But then, you know, I grew up largely in a single parent household, you know, in poverty for much of
Yeah.
that time, and a one car house. And it meant taking the bus to Lorain
Yeah.
County Community College to go to
Yeah.
college, you know. So I just think all of that
Yeah.
shaped who I am,
Yeah.
and what I believe is important. And having the ability to hopefully bring some of those lessons into my
Yeah.
leadership style.
Yeah.
And then, like I said, the thing that I was always inspired by, particularly with my mom, was that work ethic.
Mm-hmm.
To get up every day to go to work at 4 a.m. or whatever,
Yeah.
to you know, manufacture parts in a, you know, pretty repetitive environment that's
Yeah.
hot and stinky, and you know, all the things that come with it, but to do it every day, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and be motivated about it and
Mm-hmm.
passionate about creating a good product and doing
Yeah.
a good job, really to then provide for your family. And I always felt like if I could take that same drive and put it
Mm-hmm.
into something I really cared about,
Mm-hmm.
you know, then the opportunities maybe were
Yeah.
endless.
Yeah.
And then to that piece of being trying to be a continuous learner, I always felt maybe inadequate in some of those early, especially when I went to college. I felt like I was trying to catch up
Mm-hmm.
athletically and academically. I
Mm-hmm.
remember my first college baseball practice, and there was just like so many drills and things. Everyone knew how to do it, and I
Yeah.
was like, I never did this.
Yeah.
And then same thing, like first presentation and people show up wearing a suit and tie. I don't own a suit and tie. I don't even know how to tie a tie.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know? So it was like, okay, whenever I had an opportunity to meet, learn, you know, from new people or have a new experience, I was trying to take advantage of it,
Yeah.
whether it was class credit or
Yeah.
volunteer or intern or whatever word they gave it. I was trying to do it. And I felt like at some point that opportunity was to pass other people by, even if they started ahead of me.
Yeah.
And so I really credit all of that to
Yeah.
that foundation that came from Oberlin.
That's good. You talked a lot, man, you know, and for those of you that are listening, you know, what's cool, Ryan talked about Oberlin, you know, what I learned as a result of being at Oberlin, that Oberlin was the first school, you know, although there's some debate, you know, but it's typically credited as being the first school to admit African Americans and also to admit women. And so it has a rich history of just abolitionists, you know, rich history just around social justice, just as far as its foundings. A lot of it's traced back to its Christian roots. Its Christian, you know, the person that was the first president was um, Charles Finney, and big revivalist, and just some of those Christian roots that believed that slavery was wrong. So as a student, I got really drawn to that, both my wife and I. And, I had no idea that my life would eventually take this turn to where I would be on this journey, like sharing with people about social justice, the importance of humility, the importance of working together. What was unique about Oberlin is that growing up in Chicago, Chicago's a very segregated city. Like this is the white side, this is the Mexican part of town, this is the, all the different cultures and, conclaves that, people stay in their own little spot.
Mm-hmm.
When I came to Oberlin, it was interesting to me because it was a lot more open minded, and I saw people from different cultures, different backgrounds working together, interacting and stuff like that. Coming to Lorain County, particularly Oberlin, Elyria, I never seen so many interracial dating, so many biracial people in a concentrated area and stuff like that. And I think, as I got to know you more, just having a diverse friend group, I think it contributes to the richness that's on the inside of you. I feel like it contributed to the richness of me in my formative years, being a freshman, going through that. Because part of the reason why I named this podcast Humble Conversations was because I wanted to put some good out there to show that people can come together and talk who are from different backgrounds, different unique experiences, and be able to have just meaningful dialogue
Mm-hmm.
and be able to learn from each other. But also, I felt like what the world needs now more than ever is more humility and talk about that. Talk about why humility is so important in the world today. With all the political rhetoric that's out there around so many hot issues, be it DI, be it immigration, all these different things. And we're not trying to become a political thing or anything like that. But I just really want you to speak to as far as just what humility is meant for you, some things that you've learned recently about it, why humility is such an important virtue in the world today, and maybe even for those who lead people and serve people.
Yeah, there's a lot. There's a lot there,
It's
and
like that, yeah.
I think tying it back to that upbringing, and like you said, I
Yeah.
agree that richness comes from the diversity of experience. So
Mm-hmm.
maybe there's two sides of this thought. I think if you go back to the founding of Oberlin, like you said, in this idea of really what was like a Christian
Yeah.
utopian society
Yeah.
that everyone is here created equally,
Yeah.
men, women, people
Right.
of all colors. And I always say about Oberlin, it's still in America, so
That's
there's
true.
some real issues, but we're proud of that, the ideals and the way it was
Mm-hmm.
founded, and how
Mm-hmm.
people have lived together for so long. So I think one thing that I feel super fortunate about is that background. And in the times when my dad wasn't in my house, which was my entire life after I was two, and especially the times when he wasn't around, when he couldn't be here physically, or maybe we weren't talking as much, the houses that I was going to,
Yeah.
largely were black male,
Yeah.
were my role models.
Wow.
My friends' dads were the people who were taking me to games,
Yeah.
or I was going to their houses for cookouts,
Yeah.
or we were just hanging out doing homework or
Yeah.
whatever. And that
Did you
that
feel weird? Like I think people need to hear more of this, like, because it's happening, but I just feel like the media don't talk about it.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
for me it was honestly it no, it's just kind of
Mm-hmm.
what it was.
Yeah.
um and I have white friends too, and
Yeah.
was at their houses and definitely learned
Yeah.
from that. But,
Yeah.
because at my house is single mom who's working, we weren't sitting around the dinner table
Yeah.
eating dinner, and so to like go to someone's house and like wash up and sit at
Yeah.
the table and
Yeah.
like do to me what was like a formal thing
Yeah.
was new. That was a new
Yeah.
experience. And so I learned a lot, just not like a lesson necessarily, but
Mm-hmm.
those influences, a
Yeah.
lot came from other people's families, and
Mm-hmm.
many of which for me were black families. And I remember this kind of a funny story. One of those friends invited me, as adults recently, to a Christmas party. And we went, and it was hosted by his parents. and my wife came, and we had a blast. We had so much fun, and we were like, my friend's mom put together fun little games and things we were doing, and my wife won a couple of the games, and we left, and she said something like, "Did you notice we were the only white people there?"
Yeah.
And I was like, honestly, no, you know,
Yeah.
but now that you say it, yeah, we were. And then I said to her, "And how was it? Like, was it any different than your family's house?"
Yeah.
And she was like, "No,
Yeah.
it wasn't," you know? So that to me created a really rich experience and upbringing. I guess the flip side to that thought is, and that's the connection to me back to that utopian society idea. You don't necessarily need those experiences to know what's happening in the world is wrong.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, I don't need to have a black friend to know that racism is bad.
Yeah.
But definitely, I think it helps have the empathy and the humility to not only know that it's wrong, but know that you have to do something about it, that you can't just sit back. And I think to me, that's the key. It feels like of what's missing with a lot of what's going on in the world is that empathy of, you know, what does this decision mean for other people? And, you know, again, in that idea of like, oh, we were the only white people there. And it was very similar to a loving, welcoming environment that we're used to. Put your mind into what this policies would mean for immigration or DEI or whatever. And it's like, how would I feel if my family was affected by this, or if I was affected by this? And I just think that's missing. And then there's
No, it totally is. You know, I think this is why I go so hard for humility, because I think humility is the prerequisite. That if you don't have humility, which we define humility as being open-minded, self-aware, being able to appreciate others' values and thoughts and cultures, you cannot truly occupy a space of empathy like you're talking about without the humility, because you wouldn't be open to it, you know. And for a lot of people, you know, I just think you're so lucky, man, because I think to be able to have that, I think it provides so much healing to help you battle all the noise that's around you or around us, you know, in the world, where they're saying this about this. Because I go into some spaces where they haven't had the privilege of that exposure, and so they don't have that reference in their mind to go at. Because sometimes for some people in America, it's possible. I've been in some places, and they gone with me. We've been in some places where it's possible you can go a week and not see nobody of any different race. And you be like, whoa, you know what I mean? And so the only thing you got in your head is some stereotypical caricature on TikTok or TV or media.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I you know, it's part of that feeling lucky, right? Because like, who would I be if I didn't have that growing up? Possibly one of those people, you know. I don't know that there's any way to tell, but what I would you know, advise people or encourage people is to go out of your way to change that. And I've said this publicly before too, and it's like, if you can go through your social media, just your feed, and all you see is white people, or maybe your own photos, and it's like, if all you see is white people, that's not necessarily an indictment on you. It doesn't necessarily make you a racist, but it means that you're perpetuating the system that's been built of you know, the separation or the segregation. And it's like, okay, redlining created you know, what our neighborhoods look like. Racist funding policies out of that fund our schools, you know, where we go to church, where we work, who gets hired. All of those things have been created for us. And so if you're just going about naturally and you grew up in a place that was all white and you can't find anyone else, that's never going to change unless you make an attempt to change it. You have to seek it out. And I think that you know, is an important piece for people.
Because I say the same thing even to my black family and friends, you know, like, even if you got a timeline that's nothing but black people, Nothing's wrong with it, but I think it's still you're not being exposed to
Mm-hmm.
other cultures, other ideas. Because for me, I think you got to be multilingual if you want to be successful.
Mm-hmm.
And so, how are you going to begin to interact and move through the world? The world's not a black world, right? I pray the world's not just a white world, right? The world is multicultural, multiracial, all these different things. So I think people do need that exposure, and I preach that. I'm such an advocate of that because there's so much richness in every culture. Even when you travel the world and you experience different diets and different
Mm-hmm.
designs and just all those different things. It when you get exposed to it, it opens up so much creativity. Um, but I could tell when we first met because typically, if someone is coming from an upbringing that's humble and they're coming from an upbringing where they've been around, different cultures and so forth, there's a certain energy about them. They move a certain way. There's some people you talk to and you feel like it's kind of cold. You feel like there's just nothing, there's no connection, no chemistry. So I could sense, just with your level of comfort, in certain spaces. Because I first met you, I was given a keynote um, at the Urban League,
Mm-hmm.
right? The Urban League had put on a conference, and I had did a keynote about culture humility, and I think we connected on LinkedIn. We talked afterwards and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so he was like, I'm from Oberlin and all these different things, which is really cool. So, and you started telling me about United Way, and I was like, I always heard about United Way, but this is a good segue to kind of talk about what does United Way exactly do, and what was it about me that said, you know what, let's connect
Mm-hmm.
and let's figure out a way to do some stuff.
Yeah, United Way, I think is a common issue that people know of the name and know what United
Mm-hmm.
Way is, but not what we do. And for literally 100 years, United Way was founded in Lorain County in 1917. We
Really? Wow. I
existed.
didn't know that.
Yeah, we existed as the community chest. We were created to be the fundraiser for all of the other charities in the community, and so each community had its community chest, and really what it was an efficient way, and think back then especially, an efficient way for local businesses and
Mm-hmm.
employees to donate, to give
Yep.
to charity. And so communities would have these big campaigns with a big
Yep.
thermometer at the center square, and
Yep.
they try to raise money up to that goal, and then they would give it all out.
Yep.
And so for the business people, it became a way to, this is more cynical than intended, but it came a way to say no
Yep.
to every request.
Yep.
Because if you were a charity that said, hey, Ford or
Mm-hmm.
GM or Steel Mill, give us
Yep.
money, they would say, no, you go talk to United Way. We
Yeah.
give our money to United Way or a
Yeah.
community chest. And so our mission, our reason for existing was to raise money for other charities.
Yeah.
And over time, really kind of post internet,
Yeah.
especially right in the same time as I was coming here,
Yeah.
post Great Recession, that was becoming an antiquated business model
Yeah.
because not only did donors not need United Way to give to their favorite charity, so think of it, the mechanism for donating if you worked at one of those places was to give a little bit of your paycheck through withholdings to United
Mm-hmm.
Way. So direct deposit straight to United Way. And then United Way would decide for you how to give that money out.
Yep.
And so donors were saying, first, I don't need a middleman.
Yep.
I want to give to the charity of my choice directly and
Right.
not fund United Way to do it. And I want to be really engaged with the cause. And I don't need United Way to vet the agencies for me. And that was a big calling card. United Way, we would make sure they were up to standards and doing good stuff in the community. So donors were starting to change and say, I'll give directly to my cause. I'll check them on my own. I want to volunteer with them. And as that was happening, those workplace giving dollars were going down.
Yeah.
And then the environment for businesses has changed too. A lot of those companies I mentioned aren't even in Lorain County anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And so that business model was dwindling. And United Way as a whole across the world has started to change. Really, in Lorain County, this feels good to say. We're proud of it. We were right in the forefront of that change. And we talked about Bill Harper earlier. Bill and our board of directors at the time, right around 2010, were saying, hey, if we ride this business model out, we're eventually going to go out of business. And the interesting part about that is things were going well in Lorain County. We were actually raising as much money as we ever had. But you can see the trends.
Right.
And we wanted to reinvent ourselves to be needed in the community.
Yeah.
And so we started thinking through, what do we do well?
Yeah.
Well, we do have resources. We still raise a lot of money. We have all those connections to the businesses. Most charities, they're struggling for that. We had direct connections into all the large businesses and large employers. And we also had great relationships with all the agencies because we'd been funding them that whole time. So if you could kind of bring those three things together, we felt like we can do something really unique. And we started researching on, in what way could we make a bigger impact than just being a fundraiser. And it just so happened right around that time, there was this new emerging trend in philanthropy, really based out of Cincinnati. And it didn't even have a name yet, but it was this idea of taking on really complex problems in a community, and they call them wicked problems. Really complex social problems like poverty or racism or homelessness, things that no single entity can take on alone.
Yeah.
And then the way to do it is to bring all cross-sector partners together. So not only nonprofit, not only corporate, but faith-based and education and public and elected officials and citizens, and creating causes or initiatives that are community-led to then get after the root causes of those wicked problems. So right as we were learning about that, this huge journal got published in the Stanford Social Innovation Review, naming that effort Collective Impact. And so in 2011, right as that was brand new, fresh off the presses, we adopted Collective Impact as our business model. And so we changed from being a fundraiser that gave our money to others to do the work that they wanted to do, to the leader of Collective Impact in Lorain County. And we engaged all sorts of people over a long transition period. And really, we were asking the community to tell us what they needed their United Way to do. Yeah. And so they came up with goals that they wanted us to get to, like kindergarten readiness, for example. And then we created what we call community collaboratives, which are those cross-sector groups working together on wicked problems all over the county in districts, school districts, or neighborhoods to get after those wicked problems. And so now, 2025, 14 years of doing this, we fund 10 of those community collaboratives. And then we have direct service programming out of United Way, which is completely different from that old business model when we were a passive fundraiser pass-through organization. Yeah. And so I wrap all of that up to say now donors give to United Way in the same way that you would give to any other charity to fund the work that that charity does. Yeah. And it powers those community-led collaboratives to get after the complex problems, and it funds our programming, which we then provide with staff here at United Way to supplement the work of those collaboratives.
Beautiful. So what was it about me that you said we should work together, you think?
Yeah, I think then bigger picture part of that, and I said this earlier, it just so happened that a lot of the things we were focused on aligned with my personal life. So single moms, families in poverty, transportation, early education. I was able to go to a high quality preschool, and it was funded by United Way. I didn't know at the time, but I was able to connect those dots later. So all of those things that, were part of my journey are what we're then working to improve in Lorain County. And I can't think of a better fit. Right. Then you go higher level and we start to take a look at things through a racial equity lens. And for us, our journey at United Way, this gets back to a point you made earlier too, of being in a job like this and being in rooms where people are making influential decisions. And because of my background and because of what I was passionate about when I moved into this role, racial equity was something that I wanted to take on. And again, learning from my mentor, that was something that was important to him too. But I don't think the environment was right for what he was trying to do. And so for me, it was on the top of my list. But even then, I remember thinking like, I can't come in too hot. I don't want to upset the wrong donor or the wrong corporate partner. Yep. And, 3 months after I took the job, George Floyd was murdered on TV.
Yeah.
And everyone was putting out statements. And we did too.
Yeah.
And you mentioned the Urban League. I reached out to Paris and reached out to some other leaders about what can we do. And at this point, like, I'm just here to help, whatever that means. If it just means stop calling me and give me some time, I'll do that. But if there's anything I could do, please let me know. And internally, we put out our statement, and it was pretty strong worded.
Right.
But my challenge to everyone here was we can't just have a statement on our website. We have to do something.
Do the work, yeah.
And so we started looking at things we could do. And I was reaching out to leaders locally, like, hey, are there best practice examples for policies for our board, for how we can change the writing in our policy manual for our staff? And a lot of the answers were no. Yeah. There is no example of that, or we don't have it locally. Yeah. So we started doing some work to do it ourselves, to change it. Yeah. And to our board's credit, our board took a stand on this too, and actually changed some policies of even what the board makeup is, what the percentage of BIPOC representation on our board can't be below, And then our board set some strategic goals that racial equity should be a part of how we're making funding decisions and how we're forming those community collaboratives and doing the programming on the ground in the community. Mm-hmm. And so all of that kind of led to an invitation to the Urban League's DEI conference, and you were the speaker, and it felt like, kindred spirit type of thing where you were saying things that we felt. Yeah. But like I said, when I first came here, I couldn't have articulated, the culture that I was looking for. Yeah. I think it was very similar. Yeah. And so when I heard you speaking and it was just resonating so strongly, I was like, okay, here's a way that we can learn some of these things that we're trying to change. Here's a way that we could even provide some leadership into the community for others. Because really my goal with this work was to cascade it out. Yep. If we can learn it here, if we can change our board makeup, our policy manual, our policy for using BIPOC vendors, our the amount of training that we're requiring, all of these things, if we can learn it and not force others to do it, but maybe write it into some agreements, and then have it as a turnkey, solution that others could implement, that if we shared, that was the goal. And so you just were perfectly fitting right into that, right at the right time.
Talk about steps being ordered, and I, for me, for those that are listening, and it goes back to what we said earlier, if you're not networking, you're not working, right? And, God has really blessed me to have a successful business, over the last 5 years that's continuing to grow and add new things, which I'm excited about. This podcast that's going to be dropping soon. But I do remember, because when I go somewhere and I speak, Ryan, I kind of scan the room and look and see what opportunities are there for me to build relationship. And I remember following up. I was like, let's get together, let's do some breakfast. And we had breakfast right across the street at this coffee shop, and we're filming right here in United Way across from that coffee shop. And, we met, and you blessed me with some coffee, and I appreciate that, and introduced me to local ownership. And we just talked, and we had no idea where this was going to go. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? But we met again, and I appreciate your friendship, and I appreciate, just the opportunity just to get to know you and think about ways in which we could, like you say, cascade this message, throughout the county. Because I've been in this county for, 30 years now. And we've had 2 sessions where we've invited people from throughout the collaboratives. They've been very well attended, and so it's given me the opportunity to be able to continue to tell people why humility is such an important concept. If we're going to approach racial healing and approach, how we're going to bring people together so that we can collaborate, is going to be through humility. So I want to thank you for that, brother. Appreciate that opportunity. So, we're going to ask a question like, what's your leadership philosophy? What's your legacy that you want? But let's take a moment, man, because we're coming to the end. What we do is every episode we ask a question. So you take that deck. I got the leadership edition. You're gonna choose a card that you want to ask of me. And then I'm gonna choose a card. So I'm using the leadership edition. The leadership edition is for those of you who are watching who might be leaders and you need a one-on-one kind of thing, right? That you got to do to get to know your people. The team deck is more for group meetings, icebreakers, things like that. But I found a good one. And I found a couple good ones. Man, these are good. I'm excited to get these to you. Leaders, I know if you're watching, this is going to be a huge blessing to you. I've used this with my team. It's helped to strengthen relationships. It's helped to cultivate trust. So if you're a leader or you're a person in an organization, whatever you do, and you really value relationships and you want to take care of people and you want to get to know each other, these are a great asset for you to have that's going to really help you to really cultivate that trust. Just visit us at leadwithhumility.org and you can grab a couple for you and for your team, or you could be a blessing to someone else. I'm going to give you a choice. What's one of your hidden talents or passions? Or you could answer, who inspires you and why?
Man, those are both good.
Those are both good. Humble conversations, y'all.
Pick up the deck. Yeah, it's like, who created these? These are good questions. I think, I don't know if it's super hidden here because we study our strengths and we try our best to leverage them, which I think is part of my leadership style. Mm-hmm. But if you do like the Clifton Strengths Finder, my top strength is positivity. Yep. And I've really tried to lean into learning how to leverage that. Yeah. Positivity could be, it could be, in my mind at least, sometimes like plastic or fake positivity is not motivational. But if you could be encouraging and stay upbeat and calm in stressful situations and maybe make light of things when appropriate to keep people laughing. So I would say maybe that's one of my hidden talents that I consciously think about how to bring that into a room.
That's good. Positive. I like that.
And then, if I answer the second question too, who inspires me? A lot of people, my mom, what she did to provide for us and make sure we stayed out of trouble as much as possible. Yeah. So still, to this day, she deals with pain and injuries that come from working in a factory for your whole career. Yeah. So that's inspiring. And then my wife too, we just had our second. So the thanks, like the superhero ability to be present after going through the trauma of childbirth is unbelievable to me. And to be able to be a successful professional and a good partner and a parent all in one. And I was just thinking of this, and I wasn't going to say it out loud, but when I was telling that story of coming through the recession and that lawn care job, this is where we were. Her and I were dating seriously and living together, but not yet engaged. And, when you're broke and you go to work at a place like that, you're supposed to get a uniform, and they didn't give me a uniform at first. I was probably on like a probationary period or something, and I'm a big dude, so you can't just find one off the shelf. And so I wore like what I had. I think I had like a pair of khakis and I remember this ugly brown polo. Yeah. And I wore it to work the first day, and they were like, well, just wear that every day until we get you a uniform. Well, you get super dirty and like chemicals and stuff on you. And we lived in this apartment with no washing machine. So we would go to the laundromat once a week. So anyways, I can't go to the laundromat every day and wash one pair of clothes. So we would come home and wash it in the bathtub and hang it up and put a fan on it. So I'd get this like starch dried, uniform the next morning. But there were times, because that was a hard job, I would be so tired.
Yeah.
She would do it for me. And so, to remember us being broke in that apartment with her washing my work uniform because we couldn't afford to go to the laundromat, to, president and CEO, and she's a director in her field and super successful. We both have master's degrees. She has two, and we've got, two young kids. Like, this life that we have now is, still super surreal for where we came from. So that's inspiring to me as well.
That's good. That was probably one of the ways you knew that you found a good woman. She was willing to be with you.
Right.
I'm nothing, right?
If you want to be with me when you're washing my lawn care uniform and I'm driving a purple Geo Tracker from 1995 with the door welded shut because I can't open it, there's only up to go from there. So
that's good. That's good.
Yeah.
Your turn.
All right, let's see. All right. There's a good one. How do we encourage a mindset of continuous improvement?
A mindset of continuous improvement. That's good. I think what helps, you got to want it, right? But oftentimes people struggle with wanting it, right? People struggle with wanting to do the things that it takes to get to the next level. So what I always encourage people to do is I encourage people to put yourself in environments that it rubs off. So if you want to create an environment of continuous improvement, then chances are you're going to get people who buy into continuous improvement. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And we got the guy just walking back and forth on our podcast today. But that's where we are. We right here downtown.
Welcome to downtown. Yeah.
We just leaning into it. We're going to own it, right?
You never know what's going on.
You never know what's going to happen. But, that's what I think. Yeah, continuous improvement. Give you a quick story. So we had to choose a school for my son to go to because we were in a small town, Lyria. The team was okay, but I knew I had 5 boys. I knew they're all super into sports, and so we got exposed to some of these private schools out in Cleveland. And what drew me there was, one, strong academics, because I went to a private school in Chicago. My mother wanted me to go to a local public school because she was worried about me getting jumped or beat up or stuff, right? But what I noticed about being in that environment, I knew that it was going to cause my son to really have to he either not going to play, not going to make the team, or he going to have to show up and get hungry if he going to be there and be successful. Mm-hmm. And so when he saw people who wanted it at the next level, people who were like trying to go to Ohio State for football, saw these guys, the way they train, they got a personal trainer, they were there early. That environment created a scenario where it rubbed off on my children, and it created this scenario of continuous improvement. What I found, and this is a good nugget, right? And y'all should clip this. All right, Jake. You should clip this, right? You ever notice, you see how you got these trees out here and so forth? One day I was driving, I was like, man, why is some trees so freaking high? Some trees are just so tall, right? Part of it is genetics, a little bit, biology in a sense. But what I found out from doing some research is that when you have trees in a forest, because they're so close to each other, they have to compete for the sunlight. And so what happens is when this one goes taller than this one can't get the sunlight. So now he got to get up and he got to say, wait a minute, I need that sunlight too. And so what happens is it causes the trees to go really tall because they're in a space, right, of competition. Whereas you plant that tree in front of your house, there's no other trees around it, it don't go as tall. It just tends to just go round. And so that's why environment is so key. Mm-hmm. So last question, what do you want your leadership legacy to be? When you think about your leadership philosophy, what would you want to share as we end this?
Yeah. I don't know if I've thought that far ahead, to be quite honest. I think, the season of life for me right now, obviously with a newborn, I think the only thing I truly have ever wanted to be in my whole life was a good dad.
Yeah, and I can relate to that.
To me, leadership includes that. Yep. So yep. I'm not much different here than I am at home.
Yep.
I don't know, my wife might disagree, but so I want to be, it's like the lessons we teach our kids, kind and respectful and truthful.
Yeah.
And I want to make people feel included and safe and encouraged and empowered here at work. Yeah. And so that we've created real impact and helped people. And so if you say about United Way, that's what I want. Yeah. But that's the exact same thing I want for my kids. Yeah. I want them to feel all of those ways, feel loved, and go on to help a lot of people in whatever they choose to do in the future.
That's good. And I think leaders who are consistent, and that's a great way to end this conversation, because leaders who are not consistent in their personal life versus their professional life, I don't think they are as impactful when it comes to like transforming people. Mm-hmm. The word integrity, when you look it up in this root word of it, it means to be one. It means to be whole or be consistent throughout. Like if you get something, you're like, look at the integrity of this piece. It's consistent front to back, right? Or beginning to end. And for a lot of leaders, they talk a good talk, but they don't necessarily walk it. And when you describe like what it means to be a leader as a dad and what you want for your kids, you want the same thing for your employees, right? Like, that's integrity. And that's what this is all about. So thank you guys for tuning in, for watching. We want to thank Ryan for being our guest. We would encourage you to subscribe, share this video, and be sure to be on the watch out for our next episode. Thank you. This is Dr. Knight. We're signing off.
Thank you for watching Humble Conversations with Dr. James Knight. We hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Your support means the world to us, and it helps us bring you more great content. See you next time.